Okay, we're talking about the motors themselves and the choices that I'm making. And mine is the 18K minnow motor. I've been using this for a while now, about a year and a half, 2 years now. And I really like it. It's a mid-range motor. This one benched out 17,800 RPM. That's nice and mild. It's great action on our track anyway, at 12 volts. And then this is a comparison here of the Scalextric motor we just took out, 26,875, almost 27K. Again, you've read all the comments, just way too hot for these little cars. So this is just my choice. I like to do this. Yes, you can reduce the voltage, but sometimes that softens the action. I don't really, it just depends. On some motors it works, on some doesn't. I just prefer putting this lower RPM motor in here, and it really gives it a great action. Now, you choose any brand you want depending on your region. This is just my pick. So anyway, this is why we're going to do the motor swap. So let's get on with it. Okay, so when you're dealing with these slimline motors, you'll notice on the end right here, there is a sleeve on this motor shaft, and that brings it to 2 millimeter in diameter. The original motor shaft is only 1.5 millimeter. The reason that Scalextric puts a sleeve on the end is because of the gear set that they use is set for a 2 millimeter standard motor shaft. So as you can see here, that keeps the side-to-side free play, keeps it, right there, and it's made for 2 millimeter. If you didn't have this sleeve, then you would get a lot of side-to-side free play, but the sleeve keeps it solid. So you're going to have to sleeve this to use it and put it on the other motor. So what I do is I use an X-Acto blade, and you can get real close right here on the end, and you can give it a pop. And as you can see, it's going to come off, and there it is. And that's what you need to put on your new motor when you go to install it. And real quick, let's just talk about what if you can't get the sleeve off, without using the pinion and press it off, or you lose it. Well, you can get replacement tubing in nice long lengths. I got this from Slot Car Corner, but McMaster Car has it. It's a 2 millimeter stainless steel tube, and you can make your own sleeves. My best suggestion for the cleanest way to do it is get yourself a good old-fashioned razor saw, very fine tooth, and all you have to do is start here and drag. If you try to use the biting forward motion, it's just too hard to get through. You just keep dragging it across here with enough pressure, and you will get through it nice and clean, and you'll end up with this. And the reason I have a magnet on here is when I'm cutting these things like that, so I don't lose it, when it goes, it always picks it up. Anyway, you can do that. Now, can you use a Dremel? Yes, you can, but I'll tell you right now, it's going to take some cleaning up. So if you do use a Dremel or something else to deburr this, it's very small and very intricate. I just use my razor knife again, and I try to deburr it the best as possible. But it's best just to measure the length that you need and trim it like that. Some people put it on there and then they trim. It's however you're more comfortable with. This is just the way that I do it. If I cut it a little bit long, whenever I put it on the motor, then I can take my Dremel and I can sand it, or I just use a flat file and sand it until it's the right length. So just in case you lose it or you need to make your own, that's the way I do it. Okay, now we're going to talk about the motor shaft length. As you can see, the minnow motor has a slightly longer motor shaft. That's fine, it's easily trimmed. My best suggestion for setting the length is get yourself a good caliper and just measure it. It's right around 6.80, and then you mark that, and then I use my Dremel with the very fine cutoff disc and trim it off and then deburr it. Now once you do that, it's always a good thing to test bit as you go. So have your wheel set in here, and after you've trimmed your shaft, then you put it in here and you check and make sure that you have your clearance. So that's just my method for doing it. There's other ways, but a good old Dremel, just take your time and measure it. You should be good to go. Okay, it's time to talk about pinions now. As you can see with this motor, I've trimmed the motor shaft like we showed earlier, and I have installed the pinion. Now, you'll notice that it's a brass pinion, and that's because these motor shafts on these minnow motors and other replacement motors are not splined like the original Scalextric. As you can see, it has the splines on there, and what that does is that helps bite onto the plastic pinion and keeps it steady. If you try to use this pinion, plastic pinion on these shafts, you'll notice they just slide real easy on there. Now, you can use some glue if you are good at it, some Loctite to reuse this pinion if you want to. To be honest, it's just more mess, and I'm not very good at it. So I order the slotted pinions, and these are the 5.5 millimeter. They're the same diameter as the Scalextric, and they have the 1.5 millimeter shaft, so they will press on. And I can tell you right now, this is where a good press comes in handy. So I use a slotted press. I pressed it on there. I just brought it down to where it was a safe gap right there, to where, you know, if I needed to pull it back out, I could fit my puller or this underneath it. So I kind of did it by sight based on the old pinion, and it dropped right in, and it sets just fine. So I would highly suggest using these brass pinions. I think they're just you know, of course, they're a more durable gear, and you know, they fit well and they sound great in the car, and it avoids any gluing, because I've just seen too many people, they forget to oil the end of this thing. They put some CA glue or super glue here, and it gets down in the motor, and well, you know, that's not good. So I just suggest just changing out to a brass pinion, just a lot less headache. Okay, now it's time to install our motor sleeve. Again, these are a really tight fit. They're pretty snug, and when you press them on there, most times, right like that, that's a lot of pressure. You won't need to use any glue at all. I just drop them in, and they stay put. I haven't had a failure yet. If you need to use some glue, I highly suggest just putting a little bit of nail polish on here. Just a drop. You know, you're not going to need a whole lot, and then push it on. Now, I've heard people talk about using, you know, super glue, Loctite, stuff like that. Some people even try to solder it, and that's all well and good. You guys, you do it however you want to do it. I will say this: if when it comes time that you need to change this motor out, you're going to wish you didn't. The nail polish will crack easily. It holds it in place, but it'll pop off. But in this case, that was a real hard press-on fit. I'm not going to do anything at all. I'm just going to drop it in. Okay, we have everything installed. As you can see, I've soldered the wires back in place, and we've test fitted this. Got good clearance, just like we're supposed to have. Everything is nice and smooth. You always want to test fit. And there you have it. Now we have a milder motor in this car that kind of tames it down, to my preference anyway. You use any motor brand you want. I just like the Minnow. It's a good middle ground, and it works for our tracks. So I hope this helps you guys. Now we're going to go on to the wheel sets. We're going to do some wheel truing and some tire truing, and then we're going to throw a little lead in the bottom of this thing, and we're going to see how it runs.